Yay! This would be Wednesday, May 13th, 5 days away from my birthday. And we get into the That Was Then, This Is Now, Chapter 2. We also have the Charger Challenge coming up next Thursday, so a week from tomorrow, for those of you who are wanting to sign up. And we're good to go from there. And some of you just have to remember to bring in an outsider's book, and I agree. Ooh, oh, like a ninja! Rainbow!
Do you put like the days of your birthday there so we like get you presents?
Totally, or just because it's an awesome day and it's like a countdown to an awesome day. That's your way of saying you're going to get me a present, Rainbow. You don't have to. Your present is my present every day.
But it's a Monday.
Good job, and she'll be here on Monday, so that's her present on that day too.
What if I'm sick?
Oh, but that would be a double present. Oh, it burns when it hurts. So brass knuckles is going to be coming up. There's a scene where one of the characters gets beat up with brass knuckles. They are these things that you grab and you put your fingers through here and you grab onto that part of it. And that way when you hit people, it breaks it. Because it's basically like having a big metal thing in your hand and it has a lot of weight to it. They are illegal because doing it basically, kills people. And apparently that's bad. So, like, owning them is really bad, and it's not as bad as, like, trying to do work while Mr. Brovicast was teaching, because then get just stuff knocked on the ground and just be all kinds of bad. But it gives you the same idea. McDaniel?
My mom has one, but it's fake, and it has rings on it.
So like, they have ones like the little ring, it has the stuff on there. It's adorable. Probably not going to break someone as much as just hurt your fingers. Paget.
So, like, in the Outsiders, how he had the rings, would that be, like,
sort
a
of the
big
same idea.
brass knuckle?
The same idea, because that would hurt, but the brass knuckle adds weight to it and all that. But yeah, you're on the right track, yeah. Use the same idea from there. All right. Don't worry, the next time I do it, it's going to be even worse. We left off on
Chapter 25.
page 25, beginning of chapter 2. You are correct. I'll leave our brass knuckles up there to try and help you out.
It looks like a puppy paw.
It does. It's sort of so adorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so puppies say that all the time. The next afternoon, after school, Mark and me went downtown to the hospital to see my mother. She'd just had a big operation, one that cost a lot of money. Weird, I keep thinking the same thing about you.
I'm not doing
Some kids learn slow. We had sold our car, an old Chevy, our TV, a little black and white job, and anything else we could find to sell, but we were still short of money. I've been trying for weeks to find a job. Mark scrounged around and came up with some money. I didn't ask him where he got it, and he didn't tell me, so I figured he stole it somewhere. Mark was really bad about stealing things. He stole things and sold them, or stole them and kept them, or stole things and just gave them away. It didn't bother me. He was too smart to get caught. He'd been stealing things since he was 6 years old. I wasn't above taking a pack of cigarettes from the drugstore, but that was about it. I was the hustler, and Mark was the thief. We were a great pair. One thing about it, though, Mark couldn't see anything wrong with stealing stuff. I could. It didn't much matter to me whether or not Mark was a thief, but I still felt that stealing was wrong. At least, it's against the law. I think Mark was only dimly aware of that fact. Stealing was a game to him, something to do for fun and profit, and he was careful not to get caught because that was one of the rules. So that was how we lived, stealing stuff and selling stuff, trying to save money and eat at the same time. I never thought about it then, but I can see that now it was a pretty rough time for us. Anyway, Mark and I hitched a ride almost all the way to the hospital. The guy who gave us a ride was a hippie with long hair and a beard and a Volkswagen bus. Those buses are very big with hippies. I don't know why. The guy said his name was Randy and that he went to college in town majoring in English. I figure he was a pretty brave guy. I mean, Mark and I looked like tough guys, the kind who go around jumping hippies, which we had done once before. We'd gone over to the city park where the hippies hang out, just to beat up somebody. I wouldn't do it again, though. I hadn't realized those guys refused to fight back. And what happened to the one we got hold of, it kind of made me sick. Mark felt the same way, so after that, we left him alone. I don't know for sure it's the same person, but I feel pretty darn strongly it would be that we've met this character before, because where we have met Randy before? In The Outsiders. And who was he in The Outsiders? He was a social. Specifically, he was a friend of Bob's, and he meets up with Ponyboy towards the end. And what is it that he declares at the end?
He wouldn't fight.
Nice. He refuses to fight because of the whole people get hurt. So that was sort of the introduction to his hippie-ishness. So I've got a feeling that this Randy is probably the same Randy. Randy was telling us about this really cool house where a bunch of his friends lived. An old house they all rented, and everybody who wanted to could live there and groove in peace and goodwill. I didn't much believe him. I mean, there had to be a few sponges in a setup like that. And living with a bunch of people would get on my nerves, especially if they were hairy and dirty. But I was polite, said, that sounds cool, even though it didn't particularly appeal to me. Mark was interested, though, and asked Randy all kinds of questions about where this place was and who all lived there, and if he knew about any other places like that. Mark was interested in a lot of things. We knew all about the Old West, and was nutty about Warner Brothers cartoons, so it didn't bug me when he got all excited about hippie living. By the way, Warner Brothers cartoons, that's Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Tasmanian Devil, those are all Warner Brothers. When we got out of the bus, Randy held up 2 fingers and said, "Peace." And Mark held up Eminem's peace medal, which he was wearing around his neck as a joke, and made a wisecrack. Then we looked at each other and cracked up laughing. But we weren't being hateful. It was just funny. Mom was glad to see us, but she hadn't been lacking company. We had the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everybody else's business, and all the ladies came up to see her, at least 2 a day. They also brought me and Mark junk like pies and potato salad. I got the pies, and Mark took whatever else there was, since he couldn't stand sweet stuff. Cokes and an occasional M&M, just to be polite, M&M was as much sweet stuff as he'd take. As a result, I was putting on weight. I wasn't in much danger of getting fat, since it seemed like I was growing an inch taller a week, and Mark was staying as slight and slender as ever. You'd never guess Mark was as strong as he was by looking at him, but I knew from our wrestling matches that he was as tough as a piece of leather. As usual, the last thing on Mom's mind was herself. We had no more than got there and got hugged when she started telling us about this poor kid across the hall who never had anybody visiting him. How do you know that? I asked. There's so many people coming and going around here. How do you know about some kid across the hall? The nurse told me. Poor kid. He's not any older than you and Mark. It figured. I mean, her finding out about it. If there was a lame dog within 3 miles, she'd find it. It didn't bug me much, though. Thanks to her, I had a brother. Brian, promise me you'll go over and see him. I frowned. Look, I don't know the guy, so I'm not going to just walk in and say, "Hi there, do you want a visitor? My mommy tells me you don't have any." Brian, just go talk to him. He won't talk much to the nurses. He's been hurt pretty badly. Poor thing. I'll go see him, Mark said, and Brian will come with me. I gave him a dirty look, but he continued. Who knows? Maybe one of us will end up in the hospital sometime with no way to come to see us. That was just the kind of junk my mother eats up, and Mark knew it. When we left, I stopped him in the hall. What's the idea of telling her you were going to go see that kid? Mark shrugged. I'm going to. Why not? This was typical of Mark, as it wasn't typical of anyone else. Well, I'm not going. I'm going down to the snack bar here and get a hamburger. Ain't you hungry? Mark shook his head. Nah, I'll meet you down there later. I took the elevator to the basement, where the snack bar was. I sat on a stool at the counter. After sitting at the bar at Charlie's, I'd gotten used to it, reading the menu over and over, thinking about all the food I'd get if I could. I loved to eat. I could put away more food than anyone I knew. I was 5'10" at 16 and still growing, but I went through my lanky period at 14, and I had a good build, which I was proud. I should have gone out for football, I guess, but it didn't much appeal to me. I liked neighborhood football games, but all that practice for the real thing seemed like a bore to me. Besides, I knew I couldn't put up with a coach telling me how to play. I never have been able to accept authority. I don't know why. And I figure it's because of this cop, these 2 cops, who beat me up once when I was 13 years old. I'd gone to the movies with these other guys. I forget what Mark was. and we drank a fifth of cherry vodka and Coke and got drunk. A fifth of vodka is a bottle. Whenever you see they sell bottles at the store, that's a fifth. It's called a fifth because I think it's a fifth of a liter. Fifth of a liter. And so it's just the size it's called. The stuff tasted terrible, but I was a dumb kid. I drank it just to show I was as super tough as the rest of them. When the movie was over, and I was staggering around alone on the streets in the dark, these two cops picked me up, drove me out to a hill on the other side of town, slapped me around, and left me there. I never forgot it. It didn't stop me from drinking, but it sure ruined any respect I ever had for cops. Yeah, I'm sure there are good cops somewhere. I just never met any. Ever since then, I've made it a point to mouth off to cops. That's probably why I never met any good ones. So I was sitting there, reading the menu, when I heard a voice say, "Can I take your order?" And I looked up at this really cute chick. She gave me a big smile and said, "Hi, Brian. What are you doing here?" I was racking my brain trying to think where I knew her from. She did seem kind of familiar, so to stall for time, I said, "I'm here to see my old lady. She's just getting over an operation." "I didn't know you worked here." "I just started this week, but you knew I just got back, didn't you?" "Ah, yeah," I said, about to go crazy trying to remember who she was. She had this groovy, long, dark hair with a sheen to it like charcoal. Long hair with bangs just drives me crazy. And there aren't too many chicks who can wear their hair like that and still look good. And she had these big, beautiful gray eyes, dark gray with black eyelashes, and the eyelashes were really long, but they weren't fake. I'm a long practice studier of girls. I can tell about things like that. "Gosh, you've grown. You must be a foot taller than when I saw you last." "Yeah, well, it's been a long time. If I'd grown a foot, it must have been." "How you been doing?" "Oh, pretty good. I was lucky to get this job. Listen, give me your order. I'm not supposed to stand around talking to the customers." "Sure. I'll have a hamburger and a Pepsi." She took my order and left, and I was about to lose my mind. She couldn't have been someone I dated. I date a lot of girls, but I was sure I could remember them if I saw them again. Anyway, she seemed friendly, and after you break up with someone, she's not usually friendly. She seemed so familiar, I could have sworn I'd seen her recently. Whoever she was, I wanted to see her again. I'd already noted that she wasn't wearing a boy's ring around her neck, or any other sign that she was somebody's personal property. I'm in the habit of looking for things like that. I've gotten into some tight spots with boyfriends I didn't even know existed. "Here's your hamburger." I looked up at her, and she gave me this really great smile. A smile that lit up her face. I knew I'd seen that smile recently, and then it struck me who it was, and I was so surprised that I said it out loud. "Kathy?" "Yeah," she said, as surprised as I was. "Who'd you think it was?" "The last time I saw you, you had short hair and braces," I said, forgetting that a lady killer should never remind a girl of her gawky age when she was skinny and ugly, or fat and ugly, or short hair with a mouth full of metal. "Yeah, that's the truth." "Brian, you mean you didn't recognize me?" "No, I didn't." I couldn't see why that should shock her so much. Even back in the days of braces and short hair, we weren't exactly best friends. I'd never paid any attention to her. "I just recognized you because you look so much like Eminem when you smile." "I'm going to take that as a compliment," she said, giving me my check. "Eminem is a beautiful child. He has a beautiful smile to match his mind." "Yeah, he's a good kid," I agreed. She turned to go, and I said, "Wait," without thinking. So when she turned, I stuttered a little. "I mean, I haven't seen you in a while. I'd like to talk to you sometime." I really wasn't living up to my self-image. I never stuttered. "All right, we'll talk sometime." I wanted to ask when, but didn't. You should never be too eager with chicks. It gives them ideas. I waited around for Mark, but he didn't show up, so I took the elevator back to Mom's floor. I went and looked in the room across from Mom's where that kid was supposed to be. I saw him all right, but no sign of Mark. That kid had been hurt bad. He had bandages around his head, across one eye, both arms in slings, and stitches in his lower lip. "Hey, are you Brian?" He looked at me out of his good eye. "Mark said to wait for him here. He'll be right back. He went across the street to the drugstore, buy me some comics." I could tell from the way he talked that he came from a neighborhood like mine. This was likely. It was a charity hospital. "Come on in," he said. "Pull up a chair." I did. I didn't know what to say to him. Do you guys know what a charity hospital is? Let's back up. Do you guys know what charity is?
Yeah.
What is charity?
When people give money to it and makes it good.
Yeah. So a charity hospital is a hospital set up for people who can't afford it. Because normally if you were to break your arm and you go to the hospital, they ask for your insurance. If you can't afford insurance, they go, yeah, you're going to have to just go ahead and live with your dangling arm. But if you go to a charity hospital, they'll take everyone, even if you don't have insurance. Because they live off of like donations, people helping them out.
St. Jude.
Yeah, something like that. And so here, the charity hospital is basically where even if you're poor and have no money, you can still go there to get help out. You're Mark's brother? You don't look much alike. For a minute, I felt really good about it. Mark's telling this guy we were brothers. Of course, we didn't look alike. Mark with his gold hair and strange gold eyes and slight tense body, and me, big and husky with dark brown hair and eyes. So I said, no, I guess we don't. I got a brother, older. We don't look much alike either. I looked around for a no smoking sign. Can I smoke in here? Sure, as long as you don't get caught. Would you mind giving me a few puffs? Okay, I said. I lit up a cigarette, put it between his lips. When I took it back, he said, thanks, I haven't had a cigarette in a week. My name is Mike Chambers. Mine's Brian Douglas. Man, you look awful. What happened? I was beginning to be glad I had come in after all. It must have been rough being kept in a hospital that gave you the creeps with nobody to talk to. I got beat up, he said with a wry smile. I couldn't believe it. I thought he'd been in a car wreck or something. What does the other guy look like? It's a long story. You got time for a long story? Sure. I really do like listening to stuff that's happened to other people. I guess that's why I like to read. Well, if it seems like I'm never going to shut up, just tell me. You and Mark are the first people I've talked to in a long time. And there ain't much to say to these nurses. I could see that. So what can you say to nurses? Well, I always had this soft spot for chicks. I was always making like Sir Galahad, opening doors for him and complimenting even the homely ones. And I beat out a lot of guys better looking than me. And they never could figure out why. But it wasn't just a line with me. I guess I'm a sucker. I've been taken a few times, like loaning money to chicks who come on with a sob story, but I'll always believe the best about a girl until I'm proved wrong, which is my own hang-up. That explains the way I acted that night. The gang in me was hanging around the drugstore, and this black chick came in to buy some cigarettes. Me? I just see a nice-looking chick with really beautiful eyes, all black and inky soft. I guess I'm a little funny that way, because, I don't know, they just don't get me all upset. I mean, I can see a black guy and a white chick together. It sure don't bother me, while most white guys can't stand to see that. Like the gang. The minute she walks in, they get all tensed up, because black anyone, chick or otherwise, well, it just don't happen to come around much where I live. I guess she worked downtown, got off late, and just stopped in on her way to the bus stop. I think she told me that later. I don't remember too good now. So, she gets her cigarettes, starts for the door, and a couple of guys block her way. Now, the gang I hang with is a pretty good bunch of guys. A lot of heart, only a couple of wise apples in the group. But see, nothing much been happening. And they were bored, so they start picking on the chick, calling her Black Beauty and some other choice things. They were really getting crude. I was feeling sorry for the girl. She kept her eyes down and just said, "Let me by, please," real soft like. The guy started pushing her around. Not enough to hurt her, but enough to scare her plenty. She just gripped her purse with both hands and tensed all over like she was trying to keep from running, which was pretty smart. Running is just an invitation to be chased, and if she got caught, it wouldn't be in a lighted drugstore. The old guy who runs the drugstore disappeared. He was scared silly of the gang. I don't even know why. We never done anything to him. When one of the guys grabbed hold of her and really got crude, I got fed up. I went over and said, "Let her go," like I meant it. They all looked at me for a while, like they were trying to make up their minds whether or not to jump me. We don't usually go around beating each other up, but it has happened. They finally decided not to. My big brother, he's got a pretty big rep as a tough guy in our neighborhood. He's in jail now, and that's why he don't come to see me. It was his rep, not mine, that stopped him, because I ain't never been known as a tough guy. So, they turned her loose, went back to reading comics, and I followed the girl outside. She was looking up and down the street, kind of desperate-like, and I knew she'd missed her bus. I said, "Hey, girl, if you missed your bus, I can give you a ride home." She just kept her eyes down. Finally, she said something, brother, I'm not going to repeat it. I saw then and there she thought I had evil intentions. I don't blame her. Hell, I'd have to take what she just did. I'd be sore and suspicious too. I said, look, I don't want to pick you up or anything. She gave me a funny look, so I did quick. I mean, not that you're not real cute or anything. I mean, you'll have to stay here like another hour to catch the next bus, and I'll be leaving. And I don't know if those other guys might do. She saw the logic in that, because it was getting dark. Not too many cops come around that area. It's kind of a deserted street. You know how cops are. There's a million Gesundheits over on the ribbon, making sure the nice kids don't kill each other or run each other down, while we can cut each other's throats. I don't give a damn. Finally, she said she'd let me drive her home, and I had my old Ford parked in the drugstore parking lot. It was really my brother's car, but he said I could drive it any time he got busted, which is often. He's a pretty good guy, but if you've got a rep for fighting, somebody's always trying to take you on. The last time that happened, my brother busted a bottle over the guy's head and got charged with assault with a dangerous weapon. He's never used weapons before, but he finally got fed up with the whole routine. It wasn't his first offense, so he sat on him kind of hard. Anyway, we get into my Ford, and I can see the poor kid is still scared. She sits hugging the door on her side like she's going to jump out any second. I got a couple of good looks at her. She was real slender. Looked like she sort of swayed in the wind. Her hair was down to her shoulders. And it must have been straightened. She had on a yellow dress and yellow shoes, and she had her straw purse sitting on her lap. She held on to it with one hand and the door handle with the other. She really was cute. I started talking to her about just everything. Would her old lady chew her out because she was late? My old lady did. Man, they never liked anything you did they? But still, sometimes you couldn't get along without them. Did she go to school? I did, but boy, it was really a hell of a place to spend all day. I wanted to drop out, but the old lady said she'd kill me if I did. I kept talking because that's what I do with animals when they're hurt and scared, and pretty soon they get over being scared. I've got to hang up with animals, too. I could tell she was beginning to calm down a little. I mean, at least she let go of the door handle. I even got her to smile once. Now I forget what I've been saying. And then I said, I'm sorry about what happened to you back there. Suddenly she started to cry. Oh man, that got me so shook. I mean, nothing gets me shook like chicks crying. Mike stopped here. I gave him another drag on my cigarette. It's funny. Chicks crying bore me. I said, now go on, Mike. Finish your story. Well, I didn't know what to say to her. I finally said, hey, don't cry, which never does any good. She kept on sobbing, and now and then I'd catch a word or two. I got the idea that she was fed up with getting walked all over by white people. I could see that. I get fed up with getting walked over by the fuzz, teachers, my old man, the upper class kids at school. So I could see that. Brian, do you know that my old man keeps my mother from coming to see me? He said I was a dumb kid for ever getting into this hospital. So anyway, this chick, she tells me about her problems. And she uses some pretty bad language, but nothing I ever heard before from white chicks. I finally pulled the car over to the curb and reached into my pocket. She sat up straight, got all uptight. What we stopping for? She says. And I said, I thought I had a handkerchief, but I guess I don't. I pulled back out on the street. She looked at me for a minute. I kept staring straight ahead, but I could tell she was watching me. And she said, thank you. I drove her home. She lived way out on the north side where most of the blacks live. You know where? It's a pretty lousy neighborhood. Almost as bad as mine. As I pulled up in front of her house, I could see a bunch of kids hanging around her porch and in her yard. Well, here you are, I said, a little nervous. And for somebody who'd been practicing in her mind how to get the door open, she was pretty slow about getting out. At least that's how it seemed to me anyway. I think she was tired out from crying so much. Then, there were all these black kids around my car. Some big guy opened the girl's door, pulled her out and said, what's the matter, Connie? What happened? You could tell she'd been crying. Then they opened my door and dragged me out. It seemed like there was 100 black faces just staring at me. I mean, I guess it was really just about a dozen, but it seemed like 100. I just stood there, backed up against the car. Talk about scared. Man, was I scared. To top it off, the chick had started crying again, so she couldn't talk. Mike paused here for a minute. He was staring off in the distance. When he started talking again, it was slowly, like he was living the whole thing over again. The big guy came around to my side of the car. "You hurt her, white boy?" "No," I said. And it didn't sound very loud, so I cleared my throat and said, "No, I didn't." So loud that it sounded like I was shouting. It was real quiet. You could hear somebody's TV from down the street, and a dog barking a block away, and Connie's soft sobbing. I could even hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then the big guy said, real quiet like, "What if we don't believe you?" And I got so scared I was about to cry. And I said, "Ask her, huh? You just ask her." The guy called across the car, "Connie, what you want me to do with this white cat?" And real soft, her voice was so soft, just like her eyes, she said, "Kill that white boy." And sure enough, they almost did. I changed the language on that one a bit, nothing slow with me. There was a long silence. I think Mike had forgotten I was listening to him. Then he took a long breath. "That's how I got here. I must be a dumb kid like the old man says, though, because I still don't hate him, least of all Connie. I mean, I can almost see why she did it. Almost." I shook my head. "That's a rotten thing to happen to anybody." "It sure is." Mark's voice came from behind me. He'd been standing in the doorway I don't know how long. "Come on, Brian. Here's your comics." He tossed a couple of monster comics on the bed. As we got into the elevator, Mark said, "I'm inclined to agree with this old man. That is one stupid guy." "You mean it?" I've been thinking about Mike's story. I could see his point about not hating the people who beat him up. "Yeah, I mean it. Man, if anybody ever hurt me like that, I'd hate him for the rest of my life." I didn't think much about that statement then, but later I would. I still do. I think about it, until I think I'm going crazy. And there we'll stop for now. That part gets a wee bit confusing, so to go through it real quick. The whole Mike and Connie thing, it goes back to wanting to get revenge on people. Does Connie hate Mike?
No.
Nope. Who does she hate?
The guy who jumped.
Nice enough. The fact that his group, who was he a member of?
Okay.
Not just his gang. I go wider than that. Because it wasn't just his gang that she's angry at.
White
people. There you go. For her, it was the whole group of white people. And the fact is that she is lumping him into that same group. And so it comes down to the idea of hating someone just for who they're a member of. Hating someone because of their skin color. Hating someone because of what neighborhood they live in. Or what social group they're a part of. And that what it comes down to is that's what it was. She hates Mike because what he's a member of. But Mike himself, he's a nice guy. He does nothing but nice stuff to her. But the thing is, and I've asked you guys this question before, if you had the chance to get revenge on the person you hate the most, that person who torments you and makes your life awful, would you take the chance to get revenge on them? And for many of you, the answer is yes. Well, the problem here with Connie is she wants to get that revenge. But this is her only chance to get revenge on the person she wants to get revenge on. And once again, who does she want to get revenge on? The white people, the people who've been mean to her this whole time. But she's never going to get another chance. This is her one chance to do it. So she has to realize, if I go ahead and get revenge, it's going to be on this one guy. Because this is my only chance to do it. I'll never be in this position again. But does she feel guilty about it?
Yes.
What's our evidence that she feels guilty about it?
She was crying.
She was crying. That's why she's crying. Because she knows what she's doing is wrong. But does it stop her? No. She still commits to doing it. And so that idea is going to play a big role in the book coming up. The idea of doing things you know are wrong, but you do them anyway. You guys do the same thing, oftentimes with your parents. When they tell you not to do something, and you go, blah, 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 I'm a teenager, gotta do what I want. And you go do your own thing. Later on, you get in trouble. Like, you knew better. What were you thinking? You're like, I don't know. You're like, I knew what I was thinking. I was thinking I'm going to do what I want. Blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing. So here she's just sort of going against it and doing her own thing. And we've mentioned foreshadowing. What's foreshadowing? Those clues. That end of chapter 2, that is foreshadowing. When Mark comes out and says, if anybody ever hurts me, I'm going to hate them for the rest of my life, that's foreshadowing for what's coming up later on in the book. Okawa.
My page, the 42 and 41, it's like full pages.
I'll take it. I'm going to have you bring your books back up here in just a moment. When you do, You don't have to stand and wait. You just have to make sure you put your book in the right spot. If 2 and 4 are already sitting there, and your book 5, you just put it underneath. If your book 1, you put it in the middle, or on the top. If your book 3, lift, stick it in the middle. So you don't have to sit there and wait, just make sure your book goes in the right spot. Let's see how many of you I have to yell at. 1 through 5, and 6 through 10. Bring them up, and let's see how well you guys can do. Child.
Why do I have a feeling that Brian is going to do something bad tomorrow?
I don't know. 11 through 15, and 6 through 20. And go on the bottom, Maybor.
Brian,
What?
I think something really bad is going to happen.
What number is?
I feel like Mark's gonna start with drugs.
Yep. 21 through 25.
What?
26 through 30.
What?
Yeah, don't hit her.
Mark's a murderer.
He's still recording.
Good luck tomorrow, Rainbow.
Hey, Miss
Brovicast, should we
Brovicast.
stop recording?
Good look at
Oh, probably.
I want to hit it. I want
Hey!